I'm back again. This time I'm going to talk about what is the shadow. And this is a very big topic. And the reason why it's so important is that I like to explain how polarized we really are. We have the shadow and we have the light in this reality. But it's more than that. It's that everything is polarized. Basically, every single thing that exists in what we are seeing as the tonal or the world around us and the unseen world as well is polarized. So something that might appear negative can also be positive in a way. So, and it's all about this game of balancing these two polar opposites. You see this everywhere. It's fractal. So that means that in big things and in small things, you see this always this polarity, this battle, if you would like to call it, of shadow and light, constantly battling it out for either dominance or for balance. Now, it's a matter of recognizing what's going on. Now, the shadow aspects of people are found in places that they will deny. So people will deny them of themselves, and this gets pushed down into the shadows. The reason I really wanted to go through into the shadows is because it affects women so much. And what happens is, as they aren't claiming back their power and don't know really what it is and are not being initiated as young girls into what their own power really is, they start to push these aspects of themselves into the darkness or into the shadow, only to find out later that they re-emerge in different types of relationships, and then they wonder why they can't stay in relationships and why it's such a big struggle. So for example, if you are forced to be all the time being nice to people all the time or being polite to people all the time, and in reality you're in a rage, and so then you grow up having pressed that rage into the shadows, only to have it sneak up on you later, many years later, and it becomes a problem for you. You can't identify what it is. So the schools do this, parents do this, religion does this. It pushes girls who are young into the shadows, and then it really manifests an ugly side later on when women are too scared to relinquish or surrender to anything, to the universe, to things that are good for them, to an amazing lifestyle or success that they could have but don't, because they are dealing with the darkness that is sneaking up on them. And not darkness in a good way, darkness of their own denied aspects. And because the female is so complicated, the aspects can come up anytime, and also affect a woman during the time when she's menstruating, because this is why a lot of women feel a lot of pain and agony. Instead of really during your menstrual cycle, you should be feeling a sense of power, a sense of connection, a sense of excitement, because you're about to go into your dreaming and into your power. So this is what the menstrual cycle should be for women, a time of internal seeking. It opens cracks between worlds, so you can actually dream, you can actually peer into your own psyche. You can really get excited about dreaming and visualizing and making things happen. Instead, women have cramps, they're taking pills to get rid of their periods, they don't know why they're supposedly cursed with it. Well, it isn't a curse, it is actually a blessing. It doesn't mean that you need to take your menstrual blood and make art with it or smear it into different places. You don't have to do it that way. The best thing to do is to honor the internal workings, and that also includes the diet, which a lot of people are getting wrong during the menstrual cycle. So what happens anyway, I've digressed. So basically, the shadow aspects come up during that time, and they tend to be very haunting for women, especially if they haven't dealt with them, because they're so enormous. And if a girl, for example, is been denied at an early age to be creative or to express herself, or she's being too nice, or she has to be taught how to behave. Just like with boys who become violent and agitated later on in life because they get denied the male initiation rituals, women too are subject to this nastiness, which gets them to deny their own nature, and then later on men are wondering why they turn into feminazis. Now we know why. It's because of this insistence by society that they deny parts of their nature, so they become the shadow side. And what's the interesting thing about the shadow is that once you start to understand it so clearly, you are able immediately to identify it in other people, and immediately you will be able to see what in the world people are like. They're saying one thing, but behind it there's a different vibration, and you're able to tell that they're hiding something either from themselves or the world around them, or some things they don't want to admit. So what we call delusional, but sometimes it's not so easy to tell what's going on. So for example, if a woman is angry or in denial or delusional or fearful or too clingy or needy, these negative things, or she's blaming or accusing or judging or controlling a situation, even if it's secret type of control, subversive control, she is a victim of her own shadow. The shadow is amazing because just when you think that you are looking at it, it comes up and rears its head in a different way. So you really need to stay on top of monitoring yourself. You are only responsible for yourself and monitoring yourself. What in the world is causing this? So the answers to this is real deep examination of the self, but more so to regain the energy lost at any times in your life or periods in your life where there was rage, anger, or any type of trauma. If it's been sexual trauma, then and it's been pushed to the side, that's the hardest one to deal with, because sexual trauma jeopardizes or creates havoc with the energy body. So if someone's violated you, it creates trauma in the body. It just does. You can't violate somebody and then expect them to be the same after that. People are getting violated as well in dreams, dreaming violations, because in dreams you can't catch anybody, can you? So people are getting violated as well from the fourth dimensional reality. So 4D as well as 3D. And the 4D is what is interfering a lot of the times when people have no idea what the reason is. It's the same thing with people who talk to themselves, people who see things that are traumatizing. These things are energy leeches and vampirism happening from 4D reality. And it's happening to prevent people, like almost like a net to catch people out, so that it's harder for them to escape the 3D matrix where they're actually caught in this loop. So basically, any time that you need to fight through through shadow aspects, generally it's because you haven't really looked or peered into yourself deep enough to find out what's going on. So the best thing to do is to recapitulate whatever you've lost. So any energy that you've lost, by going through each time that you have been traumatized and re-pulling the energy back by using the method of recapitulation, which the shamans use to pull back. I know some people use cutting cords. It may not be enough. I found that recapitulation works very well. The only thing is there are other methods now. Certain people have created. I have done recapitulation like my whole life, and especially traumatic times, and I still pause occasionally to recapitulate like a year or whatever. Anything I remember, the spirit will help you remember situations. And I use the Carlos Castaneda way of recalling and bringing back the memories to me by using the breathing method that Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan tell us in the book. Right now, there's other methods around as well that bring instant recapitulation to you, which is great. And then you won't have to actually worry about pulling back the fragments that maybe you have forgotten. I found that when I recapitulated, it allowed me to, for some strange reason, I started to have a deep understanding of why things happened the way they did. And secondly, it was interesting because at night I would be dreaming of gas from trucks or cars, or releasing fumes, any toilet dreams, urine dreams, things like that always represent a release. So it works. That's what it means. It's been working. So if you recapitulate for a few hours and then go to sleep and have dreams like that, then you've been successful at bringing back the cords and cutting the cords and bringing back the energy to you. So that's one of the methods that you could use to bring back these memories or these traumatic events that have happened to you. Any traumatic event that has happened is a sort of an opportunity to look into why you've attracted it, and if it's connected to anything else, really need to peer into it to find out why it's happened to you. Some things seem inexplicable why they would happen, but sometimes you just have to hunt for your own reasons why. There's many stories I've seen of people that I just don't understand why it would happen to them, but then that really isn't my business why it would happen to them. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. Only you can see your own path and why it's happening to you. You've got to go into the deep parts of it, and that means facing up to your shadow and to a darker side of you that you might not want to look at. It's also the same thing with pedophilia, which is coming out now more and more, and part of it is because men have suppressed a certain part of themselves that is now coming to the surface, very ugly part coming to the surface. It's coming up for a reason, and it tells us that you shouldn't be suppressing it. How can I explain it so that we are not promoting pedophilia in any degree? It's unheard of, but it's coming from somewhere, from the suppressing of something, and then it's manifesting on the surface very ugly ways now, and why it's happened. People who have that need to go back and examine the reasons why, and mostly it has to do with some sort of suppression or their own trauma from before, which has been pushed into the shadows. And this is why certain things appear on the planet and you can't figure out why it's there, like Muslim women being covered up. This is the epitome of the shadow woman. She's veiled, she's there, she's manifested, her hair is covered, she's veiled. What is veiled? What's happening back there? And this is what we need to look at. What is happening? What is she the manifestation of? Because that is a perfect example of what's hiding in the shadows. It's a manifestation in 3D of what is happening on a different kind of level. So anything that manifests even on the planet, you need to look at it very carefully. Let's give one of the easiest examples following this Muslim thing is the manifestation of Isis. We all know that Isis is an Egyptian goddess. She has that side, yes, but we also know that Isis is now a terrorist group in the Middle East, which is funded by all sorts of sides. Now, why in the world hasn't anybody asked why ISIS, the terrorist group, is named after the goddess? And partly it's because people don't understand energy. But Isis, that part of her, has spawned these men. They are feeding off the energy and the dream of the shadow woman, of the shadow ISIS, because remember, everything has a shadow side, including the gods. These archetypes that we pretend to be, have shadow sides as well. So it's the same with the animal totems that we kind of allow to guide us. Those too have shadow aspects to them. Not everything is good. Everything has the two sides, good and bad. So these are just a few examples. So they call it the contrary medicine. So for example, I can have a cat as my totem and have, I have an imbalance. I could be in a contrary totem as well. So I can use the energy of the cat in a negative way. This is how it goes, where everything manifesting on the planet has a light and a shadow side. And it's a matter of looking at both of them and seeing what they are, seeing them for what they are. It takes practice to understand what light and shadow are and how to differentiate them. But let's be clear that we can never get rid of the shadow. It's always going to be somehow there. What we don't want is for the shadow to think it's in control when it isn't. Okay, it isn't. As long as it's identified and it knows it can't get away with things, it will usually shirk away into the darkness. It's there, but you've got it pinpointed and you know about it. So it will never try to advance on you. If it does, you're ready for it because you've got a warrior spirit and you know all about the light and the shadow. But we're going to talk more about this in other times and get into more greater depth, especially about specific examples like the terrorist group ISIS and the true ISIS, and what are the differences.